Good evening and welcome to the Dollar Dogs and Beer podcast. I am your host Andrew, and joining me tonight is Joe. He is back from his week off. How you doing, bud?
Doing okay, man. How are you?
I'm not too bad. It was a little bit mixed results last week, but you know what? I can't complain too much. When you're playing 8 games in 7 days, you take what you can get.
Yeah, for sure.
Jason is off tonight. He's feeling a little under the weather, so he is day to day this week. Hopefully, he will be ready to return next week. I don't want to have to put him on the 7 day IL retroactive to yesterday.
Yeah.
It makes the transaction sheet look a little harder to read, shall we say.
Yep.
So, Joe, what are you drinking tonight?
Tonight I am drinking. It's called ABC, anything but Corona. It's a Mexican lager with a hint of lime and sea salt. It's from Akron Brewing in Akron, Ohio.
Nice.
Family friend growing up owns this with his buddies. They were into cycling, and that's where the logo comes from. But if you're ever in Akron or the Medina area in Ohio, check them out. Great beer and good people. So
Awesome. Well, tonight I am enjoying Seamus, which is a dry Irish stout from Evergreen Brewing, which is over in Camp Hill. I've actually been out to the brewery with my wife and her friend Annie before, and very nice selection. Beers on tap, good selection of sours, IPAs. If you like beer of any kind, they probably have something you will enjoy out there. And the food was pretty good as well, as I recall. So it's not really that far of a drive away for a nice night out. All right, so Joe, some stuff happened with the White Sox over the last week, and Jason and I decided not to delve into it because you have a much better, how should I put it, much better feel for the White Sox organizations. You actually do follow them along with your Cubbies. Why don't you lead off with the brawl, and then you can roll into the clubhouse chemistry issues, because that brawl was one of the better ones we've seen in baseball over the last couple of years.
yeah, so White Sox and the Guardians played a series. This was a week ago now, and what looked like sort of a routine play at second. Um, Jose Ramirez was rounded first, came into second on a ball to right field, slid between Tim and got in safely, but either said something or hit him, and I didn't see it. And Tim took exception to that, and TA decided to drop his glove and square up, which typically it's much more disorganized than that. But dropped his mitt, squares up, and starts to swing, and
Like that was like full hockey. Like gloves went down, helmets went down. Like that's the kind of fight in hockey that the linesmen just get out of the way because you don't want to get into the middle of that.
yeah, it clearly looked like there's some personal beef there. I don't know the extent of it. I didn't see anything in particular. I know Francona and Ramirez thought there was a clean play at first originally, which I mean it looks like it. But as a result of that, obviously those two got into it, and Tim, of course, squaring up first, got the worst of the suspensions, at least as far as I can tell. Um, the suspensions from that benches clearing brawl was TA got 6 game suspension. He has appealed that, and he hasn't been heard yet. A week later, which is odd to me. But so he's been playing until that happens. Griffo, the manager, Pedro, had a 1 game suspension that's been served already. Emmanuel Clase, Terry Francona, Mike Sarbaugh, and then Jose Ramirez for the Guardians were all suspended. All those suspensions have been served. Ramirez's was dropped from 3 games to 2 on appeal. So yeah, it's. I mean, like you said, it's one of the best brawls we've seen in a while. I think Rougned Odor's right cross was a lot harder. It looked like Ramirez just struck just the right spot and knocked Tim over, and he looked completely dazed after that. Initially, Kopech tried to get in between them originally, and yeah, just let it happen at this point. But it's an overall. I mean, the brawl is, you know, a microcosm of all of the nonsense that's been happening in the South Side over the last 2-3 years. Um, the bright spot of that weekend is that the White Sox did win the season series and that weekend series with Cleveland. So they've got that, bragging rights to hang on to. But the rest of the clubhouse stuff is just a mess. Um, Tim Anderson in particular, the personal issues that have been happening off the field have clearly been affecting him on the field. He went a year without a homer for a while there. They were tracking that. I think it was a year and a couple of days between home runs for him. So he clearly has been in a funk with all the personal stuff that's been going on with him. And a lot of this came to light when Jesse Rogers, who's a Chicago beat reporter, typically with the Cubs, but got this an interview with Keenan Middleton, who was traded last week to the or a couple weeks ago to the Yankees. And he stated to Rogers, the team was plagued by a culture that had no rules. Middleton, he was traded to the Yankees. He said, we came in with no rules, didn't know how to police the culture. There's no rules or guidelines to follow. Everyone's doing their own thing. Rookies sleeping in the bullpen during the game, guys missing meetings, guys missing pitching fielding practices. No consequences for any of that stuff. And multiple unnamed sources corroborated that. Lance Lynn said, I was there longer than him, and yeah, he ain't lying, basically. He's not wrong. So, the White Sox didn't have initial comments with Middleton's story, but it seemed like a lot of, former players who were even ones who were just recently traded kind of corroborated the stories. Middleton said that a lot of the problem was, it was in spring training. Some of the guys that were doing the World Baseball Classic, so there wasn't a lot of time to gel and work together and get some of that camaraderie there. Sort of making the argument for what we've talked about here is trying to push that off to a different part of the year. But if you don't have guys like clubhouse leaders like Lance Lynn there for spring training and their new manager, it can lead to some issues. So he cited some of that. Thought maybe there were some issues, no gelling there. And honestly, yes, there's some player stuff, obviously. But in the words of Middleton, shit rolls downhill. So can't get more blunt than that. He felt like some guys didn't want to speak up when they should have, and when there's no rules, you can't police that. It's a ton of issues. You look at Rick Hahn, the GM, when the story started coming out, kind of was just, they seemed kind of mad that it was getting brought up, even though they had acknowledged previously that there were some clubhouse chemistry issues. Some people tried to chalk it up to a disgruntled player making comments after the fact. But Jake Berger, who was a third baseman for them, plays in Miami, was traded there. He told reporters after his first game in the Marlins uniform that's the most fun he's had on a baseball field in a really long time. And you're talking about a guy who hit 25 homers in the first 4 months of the season.
Yeah.
So if he's not having fun and he's still having that kind of success, I mean, that's crazy. First off, but Abreu felt disrespected. That's one of the reasons he left.
This might answer the question we all had in the offseason. Why did Abreu leave? Because it seemed like he was destined to be a White Sox lifer. It didn't seem like he would ever leave.
Yeah, he says sometimes when you're at a place where maybe you're not being respected to the point where you think you should be, you just have to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
He's third on the franchise's all-time home run list. How the heck that guy was able to leave?
Yeah.
or was allowed to leave. Not allowed to leave, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, you know, they're not grateful issues. They're all the way back to La Russa, and you know, um, there's a lot of incompetence and issues here. And this is just 2 years after they won the AL Central, and seemed to be in a spot where they're going to run away with it for a long time.
Yeah. It-
It's completely imploded.
Yeah, it's crazy to see the complete 180 trajectory that the White Sox organization has taken from just 2, 3 years ago. Jason chimed in while you were talking there, Joe, about Tim Anderson. He's been missing for so long. I'm surprised his face wasn't on a milk carton. I mean, he's not wrong. I actually drafted Anderson in my family's fantasy league, and I think I've played him less than 15 games this year because of how bad he has been. I mean, I drafted him to be a backup anyway, so I wasn't expecting much. But boy, I'm really getting nothing out of him. So
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where he's clearly just been a shell of what he's expected to be. There's a ton of games that I was watching some, and it just plays that he normally makes just weren't happening, and he was leading the league in errors early on in the year, and that's just uncharacteristic for him.
mm-hmm.
Um, you know, all of his personal issues and the team issues, I think it makes everything worse. Obviously, um, it's just terrible to see what they could have done and what they could have been with all this talent they had, and now you're sending it away.
Yeah, and this is Griffel's first ever managerial job, if I'm not mistaken. I don't even know that he had much in the way of minor league experience. Did he?
I don't believe so. At least not in a managerial role. I don't think.
Yeah, no, he
Um,
was just a player. He was
yeah,
not a manager. So this is his, you know, that's really, and again, the World Baseball Classic being this year is not his fault, obviously, but that really is a tough spot to put a guy who has never managed before straight into a major league manager's role, and then to not have a bunch of clubhouse leaders early. It is very difficult to get the culture you want to set for the clubhouse set when you don't have the main guys there to buy in on it.
I mean, you look at just the last 2 weeks with Lance Lynn in L.A. I mean, he's been back to his normal self, and that's because he can make mistakes, and the defense behind him will field it.
Yeah.
Chicago, they just kind of seem to be like, oh, whatever.
No, hey, it's a ball. There it goes. Bye.
We've officially given up, and we're putting this half-ass effort in place, and you
Yeah,
know,
Lance Lynn's gone from now granted more starts, I understand, but in 21 starts to Chicago, he went 6-9 with a 6.47 ERA. In LA in 3 starts, he is 3-0 with an ERA of 2. I Again, I understand it's a small sample size, and he has given up the most. Well, at the time of the trade, he had led the American League in home runs allowed at 28. That is on him. But at the same time, some of those earned runs might not have been multi-home run shots had his defense been
that's
behind him.
that's been the argument with Lynn, is that a lot of the homers that he gave up that were multi runs would not have been if the defense were playing up to its potential.
Yeah, because every pitcher's going to give up solo shots. You're not going to get away from that. Sometimes the batter just gets lucky, no matter how good you are. So.
Yeah, it looks like too. There was a rumor about Grandal not really gelling with the pitchers. Um, you know, and one of those things where he was like not getting a start like right before the All-Star break, and just wanted to say screw it, I'm going home for a couple of days.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like there's a ton of negativity. This pot just keeps boiling, and it's just ridiculous. Um, White Sox fans deserve better than this. The players deserve better than this.
Yeah.
As a group, they need to figure this out. The organization needs to get some shit straightened out here.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you know,
Honestly, from the top down.
yeah. I mean, what the thing is that we tried. They tried getting rid of La Russa, and don't get me wrong, La Russa's not my favorite guy by any means. But clearly Grifol really isn't much different there. And it didn't really. There's a fine line between being a tough guy and not giving a crap and being a player's quote unquote player's manager.
Right.
Fine line between the two. You have to know when to say, look, yeah, we can joke around tomorrow, but we can't joke around right now. Like,
right.
There's a time and place for all this crap, and unfortunately, it's all happening at the same time when you're trying to be a winning ball club. When you have your window is pretty much closed at this point, barring a miracle.
I don't even know if a miracle's going to save the White Sox at this point. Truth be told, if I were the White Sox, I would be shopping everybody in the offseason, clean house, start over.
I don't know why they didn't. They could have gotten 2 or 3, AAA MLB ready type guys for Dylan Cease. They should have.
Yeah.
Cease deserves better than this crap.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a big fan of his, but he deserves much better than this. Eloy does. For whatever reason, Eloy can't stay healthy disease, and it's just ridiculous.
Can't stay healthy disease. I love that. You know, and here's the thing: like they back in 2017, they gave Tim Anderson that long extension that is due up next year's a team option at $14 million, and of course they're going to pick that up because why wouldn't they? But like that was the chance to trade Anderson away. I know his value is pretty low right now.
Yeah. I don't think you could have traded him right now.
Yeah, but they should have maybe even tried to package him in with somebody else because I have a feeling a change of scenery would probably help him. But
I'd offer him the other side of Chicago, but we're pretty set there.
Yeah, you just shelled out a lot of money to be really set at shortstop.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're pretty good there for a while, and with one of my favorite shortstops.
Yeah, the White Sox, obviously there's the crosstown stuff, and we're playing the White Sox this week. The Cubs are. So, do I wish that, do I want the Cubs to beat them? Obviously. Do I want to see the White Sox in this position? No. The game is better when they're good. It really is. There's a lot of teams like that, and these guys are one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Joe. Since it's been a little bit since we heard it, who needs to read the room this week?
Oh boy. First off, I hate the Apple TV partnership because I didn't get to watch the game on Friday against the Blue Jays because of that. I just think it's stupid.
I could tell you from experience, you're not missing much. The broadcast is pretty bad. It's not quite ESPN bad, but it's pretty bad.
Yeah, the analyst Sylvie, he's not too bad on radio when he does their analyzing, but I just can't. Like, I'm not gonna. You can't talk about growing the game, and then make it more expensive for somebody to watch the game they want to see.
Exactly.
Like it's not that hard. NFL Sunday Ticket is ridiculously stupid expensive, but it's all in one place.
And there's no blackout restrictions with Sunday Ticket, is there?
I mean, there may be if in the area, I don't know, but still, like, they figured it out. NBA has their NBA TV. NHL has center ice. Everybody's got their things, and they work. Put it in one place. Everybody can watch it, and you can actually grow the game you say you want to grow. But that's a minor read the room just because I just when the Cubs are on Apple TV, I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. I actually have time to watch the game, and I can't watch the game. But anyway, we're going to move on to the Yankees because I can't wrap my head around this. Obviously, I know, Matt, last week you mentioned my prior background, 10 years as an athletic trainer. A collision on they traced it back, they think, to a collision on 5/28. A Rizzo went on the IL 2.5 months later for a concussion or likely concussion. The collision they think happened 5:28. Tatis coming back to the bag, and there's a pretty clear bump and move there, shaking of the head. He came out of the game. I think that was in the 6th inning, and he didn't play for a couple days. Apparently, according to Boone, they went through everything and he passed all that stuff back at the time. Now, is it possible? Sure, but you're a man of numbers. I'm a man of numbers. Let's look at this. So, the day of the collision, leading up from March 30th to the day of the collision, 52 games. Rizzo's hitting 304, 376, 505 slug, and an 880 OPS with 11 homers, 53 strikeouts, and 18 walks at that point in the year. He comes back after a couple days off from June 2nd to August 1st, 45 games, batting 172, 271, slugging 225, OPS of 496, 1 homer, 44 strikeouts, and 17 walks. How in the world does a guy who is absolutely hitting the cover off the ball drop off like this in a hurry and nobody goes, hold on a second? Like, how does that happen? I don't understand how this happens. I can't possibly fathom this happening when it's so clearly obvious something's wrong there. And within a day or two in BP, somebody had to see something.
Yeah.
They had to have.
Like, I could understand letting it run up to maybe 2 weeks to a month. 2 weeks is a smallish sample size. We see players going hot streaks, cold streaks, 2-3 week cycles. Okay. You get out to that 1 month mark and you see a guy whose average is dipping that quickly, strikeout numbers are way up, power is non-existent. Why do you not at that point retest him or do something? Why do you just keep throwing him back out there?
The guy had 11 home runs and then went 2 months without one. Really?
Jesus. 2 months.
Really? Playing in Yankee Stadium half the time?
Yeah.
Which has, as you always talk about, that porch in right field. A power hitter like Rizzo all of a sudden can't hit the ball, and we don't wait until all of a sudden when we do some testing on an off day and go, ugh, we don't like what we see here. And the biggest thing for me, obviously, I'm a huge, we've talked about it before. I used to tell kids, if you see something wrong, you need to tell me. And I had plenty of kids do that for their teammates. They're like, something's wrong. Good. Pull them out and averted a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Rizzo gets hit in the head. Rizzo gets, cleated by accident on a slide, or goes to catch a ball and collides with another fielder. And, there's these other issues. You're talking about catastrophic neurological damage. It's absolutely ridiculous. How in the world can the best medical professionals who handle these professional sports miss this? I don't get it.
Yeah, because, we've talked a lot. We've talked ad nauseum about the Mets and their poor training staff handling of, especially of their pitchers, with all the guys that got injured and broke up what should have been a phenomenal big four for years to come. Is this something that's going on with the New York water? I don't know. But this, like, with the increased awareness of concussions over the last 10, 15 years, this is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, think about the NFL last year. Was it Tua that had that bad concussion, somehow got cleared, got wrecked, and then they went back and said, "Oh wait, no, you have a concussion, get out."
I'm sorry. That was disgusting too.
Yeah.
That whole Tua situation was made all the more worse by putting a guy back out there who the entire world saw his head bounce off the turf in a very violent way.
And Jason's comment here, they could have legitimately killed him. That applies to both Rizzo and to Tua here, because concussions are nothing to screw around with. Definitely much higher risk in a full contact sport like football. But the thing is, with the concussion, the only way to heal a concussion is brain rest. That means no playing. That means stay off your electronic devices. That means rest. You don't necessarily need to be in a dark room 24/7, but when you're having the bad headaches, migraines from a concussion, it's a much better solution than what probably happened. He figured it was a headache, regular aches and pains, slung some Advil and tried to gut through it.
And that's part of what you heard him say, I think, was that he attributed to the grind of the season. But I mean, the offensive numbers, the numbers are there.
Yeah.
It's clear that something happened. And the fact that these people who watch him practice every day didn't see something is infuriating to me. And we've talked, like you said, we talked about the Mets organization and their handling of injuries in the past. The Yankees have been just as bad this year. The Domingo Germán stuff, not even just the alcohol stuff, but the injuries he had early on, the Aaron Judge broken toe, the Carlos Rodon injury issues, the way that they brought him back and then he got hurt again.
To be fair for Judge, I'm not putting that in the medical staff. That I'm going to solely blame on Dodger Stadium, because I'm going to use that later when we talk about Profar, but still.
Right. I do think it sounds like, it seemed like they were like waffling on, they let him play a little bit and then they sent him down, and it's like, if you set a guy down for a week in June, it's better than setting him down for 2 weeks in July.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a mess as of an organization. It's a mess of you can't miss that. You simply can't miss that.
Yeah,
I know I'm sounding repeating, but that's basically the driving point here is, as medical professionals, you can't miss this stuff.
Well, and I was back in 2019, I was coaching my kids' U8 soccer team. And through Lit Youth Soccer, we received extensive training on concussions, on signs and symptoms, what to watch out for, what the protocol was. And they were very, very, very aggressive. But like, if a kid got hit in the head, we stopped play and the kid got pulled out immediately. Because these are kids that are no more than 8 years old. Their brains are still developing. So you really want to be extra careful against concussions there. We most of the time the kids were able to go back in. They passed the concussion protocols and we were able to let them go back in. But I'll tell you this, when it was one of the kids on my teams that got hit, I was keeping an extra close eye on them for the next couple weeks, not just for the rest of that game, to make sure everything was okay. And I always made sure I had a talk with mom and dad after the game as well, to make sure that, one, they were aware if they just happened to miss the headshot. Number one, make sure they were aware of it, and number two, to make sure they knew what to look out for as well, so that they could keep me in the loop as well.
Right, and it's I put some of this on the management and the coaches too. I mean, if you're working with a guy every day, there's no way you don't see something. If you're working with him in the cage, there's no way you don't see something. The numbers don't lie here. So I put this on the culture as a whole there too. Boone, I think, I didn't like Boone to begin with, and he backed into another year there by making the playoffs last year. And this stuff's kind of why. It's ridiculous. You're messing this up. You have, nobody else hitting when Aaron Judge is out. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Like Jason said, thank God Rizzo didn't have a collision on a pop-up. I mean, just imagine if he would have had another collision that would have just compounded the already existing concussion issues. It's terrifying to think about, because we've seen NFL players that have concussions and relatively short periods of time, and it's not good, man.
No.
I remember, years ago when my sister-in-law was doing dance, she had a concussion from a fall on a lift, and it took her about a year, maybe a little more, until she was fully recovered from the concussion. They are no joke. You cannot screw around with them. I'm so glad the days of rub some dirt on it and get your ass back out there are gone in sports, and we're taking these neurological things much more seriously than we did before.
Yep.
All right, Jason's thoughts. But he's been putting a lot of them up in the comments. But Jason's thoughts, and straight from the horse's mouth, quote: Yankees continue to show that they're a garbage franchise with zero care for player safety. I love that they and the Mets are last in their division. One note, Jason: the Mets are actually a half game ahead of Washington, so hopefully they lose tonight, so that becomes true again. But for the brief period of time yesterday before the Braves Mets game, when they were in last place, that was the first time ever that both of them were in last place of their respective divisions this late in the season. So, yeah, it's not good. And we'll talk more about the Bronx a little later. Let me roll into the Phillies now. Covering for Jason tonight, obviously. Their hellish streak of 17 straight games is finally done. They had a 4-3 week last week, which honestly, considering they were in the last 7 games of 17 straight, it's a winning week. Take it. They took 3 out of 4 from Washington and then dropped 2 out of 3 to the Twins. Scores from the Nat series: 8-4 win in game 1, 4-5 loss in game 2, 7-0 win in game 3, 6-2 win in game 4. And the Twins had that huge offensive output on Friday night, 13-2 victory, and then the bats disappeared the rest of the way. They lost 8-1 in game 2 and 3-0 in game 3. Jason's thoughts. It was a disappointing end of the week, but overall they're still crazy hot. I was looking at some stats. I put this up in our group chat earlier. Over the last 60 games, the Phillies are have the second best record in baseball at 40-20. The only team ahead of them is Atlanta at 41-19. Which I know frustrates Jason to no end, because it seems like every year the Phillies get on a streak and Atlanta usually gets on a streak right about the same time. So even though they're playing well, they can't make up ground. The other teams that were close, the next best teams were the Orioles and the Dodgers at 36-24. So, no doubt about how hot the Phillies have been lately. Sorry, went to the wrong spot. So, what Jason was really upset with this past week was how Sunday ended with a garbage umpire show. A lot of missed calls. I was actually surprised Jason and Ron didn't find the ump scorecard, but I'm sure it's going to look pretty bad when we look at that one. Jason is ready to call for robo umps, or at least better accountability for umpires when they screw up calls that badly. And, we talked about this last year after one of Angel's particularly bad games, where the ump scorecard, I think, was a +3 or a +4 towards the other team because of such bad one-sided missed calls. Actually, it might have been after the Schwarber game when he got tossed. Anyway, we talked about that, and it's written into the contract of the umpires that they get, I think, 1.5 or 2 inches all the way around as a quote unquote gray zone. That's way too loose. Cut it down to a 1/2 inch. Jason pulled it up +1.5 in favor of the Twins. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, with that, I don't know that I'd go robo ump. What I've heard a lot of the Cubs reporters talking about, they spent some time in Iowa, and they have a challenge system. So it takes 10, 15 seconds to go look at that, pull it up, there it is, and change it if it's wrong.
They basically do it like the tennis system where you challenge, they show it where it bounces and out. Yeah. That would be great. And honestly, that would probably be that's a better system than the replay system we have now. If we're
absolutely.
Jason was actually at Thursday's game last week. He took his mom. We saw a rare solid Nola start, gave up a run, but the offense finally showed up. Trey Turner had a go-ahead 2-run homer. Castellanos, Real Muto had homers. It was a good win. He loves that Kimbrel finally has a closer's entrance. Yeah, what took so long for that? That should have happened months ago. Looking at the replay, Jason said, I'd be favor of that. Anything is better than this trash. Well, Jason, you don't have to mention Angel by name. And then Lorenzen, he threw that no-hitter, 124 pitches. The final out was an easy fly ball to center that Rojas got. 14th no-hitter in Phillies history. First one since Cole Hamels no-hit the Cubbies in his final start as a Philly, right before he got traded a day or two later. Go figure. So, definitely honestly, a lot of good bright spots, even around a bumpy end of the week. Jason said, thinking how they were closer by committee for most of the season was the I forgot about the closer by committee thing. Yeah, good point, Jason. I forgot they were doing closer by committee. Okay. But anyway, I'm glad to see he is the official closer and has his entrance. Kimbrel's the guy I'm always gonna have a soft spot for. Never not gonna have that. Love the guy when he was with Atlanta early in his career.
Yeah.
I actually got to see him pitch in Turner Field way back when. I know I'm dating myself. Turner Field. It was Braves Phillies. It was back in 2000. I think it was 2011. Me and the wife, although she was only my girlfriend at the time, we went down to see. We went down to see Braves Phillies game, and it was Doc Holliday versus Tim Hudson. It was such a great game. Ironically, the people sitting in front of us were actually from Lancaster County as well, but Phillies fans, of course. We were on the third base side. We were like 8-10 rows up. We were super close to the action. And the final score was 1-0 because, as Charlie Manuel was well known to do, he left Doc in for one inning too long, and he hung a slider to Dan Ugla, who slammed it out of center field in the 8th inning. So we got to see Craig Kimbrell come in. And, Joe, let me tell you, primetime Craig Kimbrell, when he was a young guy and cracking 100, that's one of the loudest balls hitting a catcher mitt I have ever heard, and especially that close to the field. That was just crazy to hear.
Yeah, Kimbrell's a special guy. It's excellent that he's having some success there in Philly and all that. I'm glad for Lorenzen's sake that Davey Martinez wasn't the manager for this. Dave Roberts wasn't the manager for this game because he may have pulled him out in the 7th inning or 6th inning.
Yeah. I know. I saw that 124 pitches. I'm like, oh boy, somebody's got something to say about that in Los Angeles. I'd never let my players do that. Yeah, we know, asshole. You pulled Clayton Kershaw out of a perfect game. Idiot. All right, let's move on to the fantasy update. It was a great week for me. The Acuna Boomas knocked out Roddy Schmidt happens 19-9. I didn't even have to run any pitchers on Sunday. I left Garrett Cole in because I figured I'd take a gamble, and I didn't think he'd give up more than 2 walks, and he didn't. And one of Ron's relievers came in and gave up a walk, so I got the category right back. Joe, Jason finally bested you, 14-11. I think that's only his second time he's beaten you this year.
Second time. Hats off to you, Jason. Much better week for you than me. In a lot of categories. So.
Jason said finally in the comments.
Yeah.
Live it up while you can, Jason. I'm coming for you. So looking at the overall standings, Jason is still holding the wire-to-wire lead. I've shrunk that back down to 6.5 games. And Joe, you're 27.5 out. Ron is down to 90. Jason last week when I asked him the over/under for 115 games out, Jason took the under. He doesn't think Ron's gonna get quite rung up to 115. So what do you think? Is Ron gonna hit that 115 out or not?
I don't think so. I think he's gonna turn some things around as we get closer to the postseason and stay under that mark. I'm gonna side with Jason.
I might have said 120. Yeah, Jason, you might be right. I think I said 120. Okay, either way. All right, 120, yeah. I don't think 120. 115.
Still under.
I don't know that we have enough time left in the year for 115. If we have one more week, 115 would definitely be in striking range, but I don't think that's going to happen. That was a fun week. I need more weeks like that so I can catch Jason. Sorry, it's going to be you this week, Joe.
We'll see about that, pal.
Jason's current prediction, he's going to have Ron at 111 games out. Oh, He has them 2 more times. Of course he does. I forgot that was the week 1 matchup that gets repeated at the very end. All right. Well, anyway. All right. So rolling on. As I mentioned earlier, the Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium wall has claimed yet another victim. Rockies left fielder Jurickson Profar left the game Sunday with a left knee injury after he ran into the wall while making a really nice inning-ending catch. It was a sharp liner that Mookie Betts hit, and just what a great catch. But he ran straight into that section of the wall that had that mesh cover over the video board. Clearly not nearly enough protection there. He was down the warning track for at least 2 minutes before medical staff helped him up and escorted him into the bullpen. So this is, Profar is the second guy that the wall has claimed this year at Dodger Stadium. Aaron Judge got hurt earlier this year running, his toe jammed against the concrete. But first of all, why you have exposed concrete anywhere in an outfield wall, I don't understand. It's not that hard to put up a sufficient amount of padding on that wall to make sure that doesn't happen. And to their credit, the Dodgers did correct that right afterwards. So I am glad to see that, but come on. And I know with the video board, I don't know what else you could do besides the mesh, but it's something that the Dodgers probably should look into in the offseason if there's something else that they could possibly do, maybe even a different type of gravel in that section of the warning track so it feels differently to give you a heads up that, hey, you need to brace for a harder impact. I don't know.
In the words of Sean Connery, it's too late. The damage is done.
Well said. Well, speaking of damage being done, what about the Cubs last week, Joe?
Well, I mean, just to touch on the wall thing, I mean, the Cubs have a brick wall in the entire outfield, and everybody knows it's there.
Yeah, ivy does not really cushion that wall hardly at all, I wouldn't think.
Either put some padding up or put some ivy up. Yeah, interesting mixed bag of a week for the Cubs. They lose 2 of 3 to the Mets to begin the week, and Pete Alonso had 4 homers in that series, 2 one night and then 1 the other 2 nights. So Pete Alonso had himself a breakout week for the Mets, which probably helped Jason. I think he has Pete Alonso, so that worked against me, to be sure. But the Smiley got roughed up in the first game of that series. 11-2 was the loss for that. Alonso accounted for 6 RBIs and 2 runs. So, I mean, had himself a heck of a game that night. Smiley is now in the bullpen from a Cubs standpoint there. Cubs win the middle game. He's being called the Palatine Pounder. Mike Tauchman had the go-ahead homer to win this game, and this was Tyone's best start of the 2 of the week. 7 innings, 3 hits, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. And then they lose the rubber match 4-3. Alonso 2-run homer. So Alonso had himself a heck of a first part of the week. And then the Cubs went to Toronto and took 2 out of 3 there. So they win the first game 6-2. A 2-run belly bomb, which also helped Jason, I think. And Nico had a home run as well. So
actually, that trade didn't process until Sunday, so maybe not.
Yeah, that helped Jason this week then. But anyway, the big driving force behind that, they had Javier Assad, who rose to some acclaim through the World Baseball Classic pitching for Mexico. Went 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 run for the Cubs in a spot start. Really, really, really pitched well for them lately. Win the second game 5-4, just behind Justin Steele's 5 innings. And then they lose 11-4 Sunday. Same old Jameson Taillon. Back to some issues. Apparently, he said, I think, to reporters afterwards, he's having trouble with his 4-seam and getting it to locate. It's running arm side quite a bit. The bright spot about this week is that the Cubs are 19. Their last 26 games, they're 19-7. So in the nice stretch between the middle of July to now, you've got yourself in contention where every game is not as stressful as the other. You know, trade deadlines go on, and it's just a matter of seeing if you have enough to get through. So, because of this success, my question to you as we wrap up the Cubs is: does David Ross get the credit for this? Is it time for me to give David Ross credit for the efforts in the dugout?
Oh man, dude, I hate to say it. I think you need to give David Ross some credit. I know it's got to be one of the most painful things I've told you to do on this show, but I think it's time.
Yeah, I
His
mean,
his
I mean,
his roster changes have been working. He has been shockingly making the right moves with the bullpen. I know, former catcher making good pitching moves, unheard of, but yeah, it might be time.
yeah, I did. Mea culpa on Jim on shoot Hoyer. I mea culpa on Jed Hoyer earlier this year. Ross is making enough moves to put guys in the right position and making the smart moves. Benching Seiya for a week
Mhm.
really helped him. Um, you know, he's been messing around with the lineup a little bit lately, which has been kind of difficult to watch. And I think yesterday messed up the timing of taking Tyone out of a game. They were already down 5-2. He let Tyone go out for the fourth, and then they were down 8-2. Uh,
Oof. Yeah.
so, the moves like that and lineup issues still have me holding out a little bit. But I do have to say, the players have done a great job, um, and Ross has made enough good moves to at least get me to lighten up a little bit.
I can accept that because odds are at some point he'll do something dumb and piss you off enough. So lighten up a little bit's a good spot to be right now, I think.
Yeah.
All right, and then moving on. Just yesterday, the Marlins had a stunning comeback against the Yankees. In the ninth inning, they were down 7-3, and then they put up five in the ninth against Clay Holmes and Tommy Canley. I think it's Canley. If I screwed that up, Tommy, I'm very sorry. I'm terrible with names, as I've mentioned many times. The Marlins ended up winning that 8-7. The Yankees are now 5 games back behind the last wild card berth in the American League. They're on track to miss the playoffs for the first time since 2016. It's the first time the Yankees have lost them, leading by 4 runs in the ninth since July 11th of 21. And in their last 12 series, they are 3-8-1. And they've lost 6 straight rubber games in the 3-game series. For the Marlins, their trade deadline acquisition, Jake Berger. How funny, we were just talking about him. He hit the walk-off single in the ninth, along with 3 total hits for the game. So, Joe, we got 2 teams trending in very opposite directions. The Marlins are in the final wild card spot right now, half a game up on both the Cubbies and the Reds. Whereas the Yankees, 5 games out of the final wild card spot in the AL, last place in the AL East. I know last place doesn't mean as much in a division where everybody is still over 500, because that's a brutal division. Although they're going to be only 1 game over 500 after tonight if things continue, as Atlanta's up 8-2 right now over the Yankees. So, we got 2 teams trending in opposite directions. First, let's talk about the Fish. There's a lot of back and forth as to did they do enough. I liked a lot of what they did, the trade deadline, but there were questions of could they have done a little more? Did they do enough? Should they have really sent Gene Segura away, which I'm on record of saying yes, they didn't have a spot for him. Get him out, get somebody in that can help the team better. I like the moves that they made. Clearly, Jake Berger is paying off quite well. Now he's in a place where he can enjoy playing the game again and not deal with the wild, wild west, attitude that he was dealing with the White Sox. So, Joe, the Marlins right now, I'm not. This is going to sound very Hubrick, but I'm not terribly concerned with the Marlins right now because we've got a 13-game lead over the Marlins for the division right now. Is it 13? 14. It's 14 games ahead of the Marlins. I'm not concerned about them. As a wild card team coming into the playoffs, on the other hand, I am very concerned because the Marlins, when they come in as a wild card team, they've only ever been knocked out once. And that was by us, thank God. Because when they won their first World Series, they knocked us out. So it felt nice to return that favor to them. Are you feeling it? Are you feeling a good run for the Marlins? You think they're going to hold on to one of the wild card spots and make a run?
I think they certainly could. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I think, making the Gene Segura trade only made sense when they brought Berger in because Berger's the third baseman.
Mm-hmm.
You have Arise at second and or first, and you have Chisholm playing center field. So if they hadn't traded Garrett Cooper, I would agree with the Gene trade. Because they traded Garrett Cooper, who's their first baseman, I'm a little wishy-washy on that because now you could move Arise to first and have Gene play second, and it would kind of lock things up a little bit better for you. So I mean, if they hadn't traded Cooper, I would say yeah, Gene needed to go. But because they traded Cooper, I'm kind of like, this probably wasn't a good idea. But they did what they felt they needed to do, and they're still in the mix of this, and they're a scary team, and I could see them certainly being in the conversation there. I mean, I'm hoping for obvious reasons that they aren't, but
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised if they are.
So
they've done enough. I watched them firsthand. They took two of three, if not the whole series, from the Cubs not too long ago.
Yeah.
Back in June when the world was, collapsing and the sky was falling. But so I think they certainly have the talent to do it. Whether they do it or not is kind of, we'll see what happens.
So right now the Marlins are playing the Astros. They're up 5-1 in the top of the ninth with 2 outs. So that's likely safe. Then starting this weekend, they're on the road for 6. They go to Los Angeles to play the Dodgers and then San Diego for the Padres. They've got 2 series of the Nats that are separated by a mini series of the Rays. They've got the Dodgers again in the beginning of September. They go to Philadelphia, and that's the last time they'll play the Phillies in early September. Then they go to Milwaukee. They have Atlanta for 3 more in the middle of September. And then the rest of the year is not bad after that. Mets for 3, Brewers for 3, Mets for 3, Pirates for 3. And the last 6 are on the road. At that point, with the NL Central, if it's locked up, who knows what Milwaukee's going to be doing. So if Milwaukee holds on, or that could be the only real stumbling block in the road for them at that point. But it's not the easiest schedule in the world, but they've definitely got enough fluff in there that they should be able to make a pretty strong run, I would think.
I mean, I figure the Philly series is obviously going to be big.
Mm-hmm. I think that's going to be the biggest.
And the Dodgers series are going to be, fun games to watch. Could go either way. I mean, they're handling their own against the defending World Series champions. So, honestly, if I'm a Marlins fan, nothing scares me at this point.
Yeah.
That schedule does not scare me.
There's only 2 things that really that I look at with the Marlins that give me pause. They are significantly better at home than they are on the road, 36-25 versus 26-32. But they're 30-37 against teams over 500 now. That's about to go to 31-37. And they still have a negative run differential in the season. But hopefully, we'll see. Hopefully we'll see that whether they have enough with the deals they made at the trade deadline to push them through. Hey, Jason, I don't think my dad appreciates you taking nights off, but chiming in. Sure, don't show up, but chime in anyway. Somebody's got to keep old Ricker on his toes. And then we look at the Yankees, and the Yankees are trending about as opposite as you can. I mean, we mentioned it earlier with with the clubhouse issues, with handling injuries. The Yankees have stumbled out of the gates in the second half. They dropped 2 out of 3 to the Rockies. They got swept by the Angels. They did sweep the Royals, but that's the Royals. Split with the Mets. They dropped 2 or 3 to Baltimore. They dropped 2 or 3 to Tampa. They split a 4-gamer with Houston. They dropped 2 or 3 to the White Sox, and they dropped 2 or 3 to Miami. They're down 8-2 right now against Atlanta on the road in Atlanta. This is a team I don't see the Yankees making a run to pull themselves back in. Here's their schedule the rest of the way, Joe. After Atlanta, they've got Boston, they've got the Nats, they've got the Rays, they've got the Tigers. So, they got good teams, hard teams. Then they go to Houston. They got the Tigers again. Then they've got the Brewers. They've got the Red Sox, Pirates, and then they've got Toronto, Arizona, and Toronto, and then the Royals at the end of the year. But let's be real. By the time that last series rolls around, those last 3 games might not mean anything. They might be so far behind. That's not an easy September. That's kind of brutal, actually.
Yeah, I don't see anything really changing there in the Bronx. And honestly, if you're a Yankee fan at this point, you need to be demanding some changes, because not just in the dugout either. I think Boone needs to go. I think Cashman needs to go. You got to clean house, because Cashman's been there this long, and they haven't developed maybe but 1 or 2, maybe 4 tops of prospects in their own system.
Yeah,
make it to this point. That they're based entirely on buying things, and it's not working. It's simply not working. Making the playoffs isn't good enough anymore. This is the freaking New York Yankees. They deserve much better than this. Fans deserve much better than this. You don't win 27 titles in the history of your franchise without developing some talent in-house. You don't do it.
If I'm not mistaken, and I might be mistaken here, but if I'm not mistaken, the only guys in the active roster right now that are legit homegrown Yankees are Luis Severino, Volpe, and Judge.
Yep.
LeMahieu? Was LeMahieu? Or was he
Maybe.
traded? But anyway, so yeah, that's whereas you look at Atlanta and most of that roster is homegrown talent. Look at Philadelphia. Big chunk of that roster is homegrown talent. Look at your Cubs. Ton of homegrown talent. Are the teams supplementing with free agents here and there? Yes. You cannot homegrow an entire team and be competitive in Major League Baseball right now. That's not going to happen. But
there has to be a balance, and
yeah.
if you're a Yankee fan, you need to start demanding change.
Yeah. Honestly, the Yankees should have been selling at the deadline to try and bring some prospects back, because their farm system is not deep right now.
No, it's not.
If I'm not, do they even have anybody in the top? They might not even have a top 100 MLB prospect right now. Or they
probably don't. But I mean, if Volpe weren't up, he'd be the only one. So
yeah, Volpe would. Yeah, without a doubt, he would be. Let's see. Their top prospect right now is Spencer Jones. I'm trying to remember if he was in the MLB top 100 or not. He might be. But Spencer Jones, he's going to be, 2025, maybe, probably closer to 2026. So, they don't have, their top prospect isn't even close to coming up here. I'm pulling up the top 100 quick. Spencer Jones is number 78. So they've got 78, 79, and 80. So, when your top 3 prospects are that far down in the overall top 100, that does not show me a strong farm system.
No, a lot of things need to change here, and I hope that, whatever you think of Steinbrenner in general, I hope he wakes up to the reality here. The Yankees are an embarrassment right now.
Yeah, old George is turning in his grave right now at the state of his Yankees.
Yeah.
All right, so moving on to Down on the Farm, Jason sent me his players for the week. So the batter this week is Tristan Peters of the Montgomery Biscuits. They're the Double-A affiliate of the Tampa Bay Rays. Mr. Peters is on an 8-game hitting streak with 5 multi-hit games during that stretch. He has a .451 average for the streak with a homer and 8 RBIs. It's a pretty good week. And then our pitcher this week is Owen Murphy of the Augusta Green Jackets, Atlanta's single-A affiliate. Last week, he went 2-0 with pitched 11 in the third innings, only allowed 4 hits, 2 earned runs, and 17 strikeouts. Not bad. Jason did have a special note with the Augusta Green Jackets. He loves the name and the reference to the Masters, and the B logo that they use is colored green. So, it's different, but still pays homage to the Masters tournament. I'm with him there, too. I've heard from many people on Atlanta Braves fan sites that the Green Jackets is a wonderful experience to go to. Good game day experience, nice stadium. So, speaking of the Braves, let's roll into it. Joe, it was a very long week for Atlanta, 8 games in 7 days because of a doubleheader at the Mets to make up for one of those rain delays earlier this year. They went 5-3. I will take that. For an 8-game stretch, I'll take 5-3 anytime. No questions asked. They split a 4-gamer with the Pirates. They lost game 1 7-6, won game 2 8-6, won game 3 6-5, lost game 4 7-5. And then the Mets. Game 1, 7-0 win. Game 2, 21-3 win. By the way, Joe, for the record, the Atlanta Braves put up more runs in that game than the Atlanta Falcons did in their preseason game the night before. Second game of the doubleheader was a 6-0 victory, and Game 4 was a 7-6 loss. They almost came back and won. I'm going to completely attribute that loss to the fact that was on ESPN Sunday Night Baseball, because nobody plays – nothing is ever regular on Sunday Night Baseball. The offense has remained incredibly hot last week, even when they lost. Looking specifically at that 21-3 obliteration that they hit the Mets with, Olsen hit 2 home runs. Ozzie had a home run, 6 RBIs. Murphy, Riley, Nicky Lopez all hit home runs. That was Nicky Lopez's first home run since September 9th at 21. Granted, he did hit it off a position player. I will put that out there. It was against a position player, not a real pitcher. Olsen would also hit a home run in Sunday's loss. So his season total's at 43, which leads the majors. He also leads the majors in RBIs at 107. Second place, just to put that out there, is Ozzie, who has 90. So he is 17 up in the RBI race right now. The Braves have now hit 227 home runs this season. Actually, make that 228. Austin Riley homered earlier tonight, which leads the majors by a pretty large margin. Olsen's 7th multi-home run game of the season, number 20 of his career. Rookie starter Alan Winans, a very impressive outing. He went 7 innings, 4 hits, no runs, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, despite throwing a fastball that barely breaks 90 miles an hour. A true Greg Maddux-esque outing. I loved every second of it. At the fact that it was the Mets getting obliterated was even better. The really fun part about Winans, Joe, he was actually drafted by the Mets back in 2018, but was acquired by Atlanta in 2021 as part of the Rule 5 draft. So we only had to pay the Mets, I think, like $125,000 for his rights to beat them up. That's even better. So Sunday's loss was only their 3rd loss in their last 17 games against the Mets. In this span, the Atlanta's outscored them 124-61. This is, thank God, the end of an 11-game road streak played in 10 games. Everything was consecutive. No off days in there because God forbid there'd be an off day in there. And for the 11 games, they ended with a 6-5 record. I'll take it. 11 games and 10 straight days on the road. I'll take a 6-5 record. No questions asked. And I'm just, Joe, I'm just enjoying these games, watching them push for that all-time home run record, because I have a feeling it might be going down this year the way they are hitting. If they stay hot like this, that record's going to get shattered. All right, so let's move on to Wander Franco. This just came up last night. I wasn't going to quite put it in, but they did get a little more information on earlier today. So MLB has launched an investigation into Wander Franco while the Rays placed him on the restricted list. Social media posts question the alleged nature of a relationship between Franco and a minor-aged girl from the Dominican Republic where he grew up. He did not make the trip with the Rays to San Francisco, where they start a 3-game series today. In a statement from the team, the Rays said, quote, the Tampa Bay Rays and Wander Franco have mutually agreed that he will go in the restricted list and take a leave from the club for the duration of the current road trip. He also did not play Sunday, though manager Kevin Cash noted that Sunday was a planned day off anyway. Although it should also be noted he did leave the dugout in the fifth inning and he did not speak to the media after that game. So, that's just going to be something to keep an eye on there. Jason did note earlier, let me find it here. Regarding Wander, this doesn't excuse anything, and I think the book would need to be thrown at him, but he wonders if this type of relationship is illegal in the Dominican Republic. Wouldn't change that it's straight up garbage for a grown-ass man to be dating a minor woman, but that it would have an effect on the punishment. I frankly, Joe, I don't think that even if that type of relationship is legal in the Dominican Republic, I don't think that's going to change how MLB would handle this. You're playing Major League Baseball, which is located in the United States and Canada. So you are bound by the rules of the United States and Canada, and they will enforce rules as if it were the United States and Canada. They're not going to let that fly. I wouldn't think one bit if these allegations turn out to be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing to focus on at this point is to kind of wait until we get more information. I don't like to jump into something like this until there's more information out there.
Yep.
Obviously they thought that they needed to look into this, and I think to get him away from the club while this is happening, obviously is a good move, regardless of the outcome. You wonder what it'll do to the team. Not that that's important, obviously, but you wonder what that's going to do to the Rays without him. But we'll see where things progress as more information comes out.
I think Wander Franco, even if all of this turns out to be nothing and it blows over, goes away, no punishment, whatever, Wander Franco needs to take a very hard look at the life choices he is making and start making better ones. He signed a franchise record contract this offseason. Well, an extension, excuse me. And they already had to bench him for a couple games earlier this year because of how he was handling things. You don't want to turn into the next Fernando Tatis Jr. I'm just going to leave it at that. You don't want to do that. If you're going to be the star of your team, if you're going to be pulling in that big contract, you need to be held to the highest standards. You need to hold yourself to the highest standards as well. And I hope that, again, as you said, because we have very little info on this, we're not going to declare him guilty or anything at this point. This is all speculation, and the information we've had has been extremely limited, but he needs to be a lot more careful in the future, and he needs to make better choices. All right, let's move this along, Joe. Look at the hot list. My hot hitter for the week is from Atlanta, Ozzie Albies, /333, 400, 583, 12 hits, 3 homers, 8 runs, 13 RBIs, 3 stolen base, 3 walks, 7 strikeouts. That's almost 2 RBIs a game. That's nuts. For Jason, it was Trey Turner. Since the standing O, he's had a 10-game hitting streak, a 485 average during this run, playing great defense, 6 doubles, 2 homers, both in key moments, giving the Phillies a lead from behind, as well as 9 RBIs. Joe, who's your Moneyball hitter this week?
Before I do that, I just want to I think that the Trey Turner story is phenomenal.
Yeah.
He's been on fire ever since that. And the rest of the team has rallied behind him too, because a lot of other guys have been really good. Not to take away from Trey, obviously, but I think that moment is a huge turnaround for him and the entire ball club.
Yeah, absolutely. And selfishly, having used a first-round pick on Trey Turner, the first overall pick, actually, I'm extremely happy to see that Trey Turner is finally starting to somewhat prove the value of that number 1 overall pick.
And for the sake of Jason, I am willing to lose to Trey Turner this week. I will not wish Trey Turner a bad week for you, because that would be bad for Jason and the Phillies. So,
Love it.
I hope he takes that into consideration the next time we play each other. But anyway, the Moneyball hitter of the week for, and I feel it's an obligation to do this each time we talk about the Braves. To part owner Andrew, Atlanta Braves, Matt Olson is the Moneyball hitter of the week, hitting 385, 543, 888, 885, slash line, OPS of 1428. 9 runs, 10 hits, a double, 4 home runs, 8 RBIs, 5 strikeouts, and 9 walks.
That's nuts.
That is absolutely insane. Had himself a heck of a week, and obviously it worked out in your favor with that 5-3 week.
Oh yeah. By the way, Joe, I did check. Alonso is available as a free agent if you need a first baseman. Jason did have him earlier this year. He also had Olson. I think what happened was he had Olson. Olson went cold. He dropped Olson, picked up Alonso. Alonso went cold. He dropped Alonso. Meanwhile, early in June, I saw that he dropped Olson. Was like, you've got to be kidding me. Grabbed Olson and have been running that home run streak ever since. So the reason why my offense is so good, you can blame a combination of me drafting Ronald Acuna Jr., who has been ridiculous, and Jason giving me Matt Olson for free.
And as a part owner of the Braves, you're welcome.
Indeed. Looking at the hot pitchers, I'm going with Gavin Williams this week. He did not record a decision this week in his 2 starts, but in 12 innings, he struck out 22 batters. 0.75 ERA, a 0.58 whip, 1 earned run, 6 hits, a walk, 1 home run allowed. Not too bad. Jason, of course, picked Michael Lorenzen. I can't even blame a homer pick for that. The dude threw a freaking no-hitter. 2 starts, total of 17 innings on the week. The no-hitter where he threw 124 pitches, 5 strikeouts, 4 walks. Not bad at all. Joe, do you have a hot starting pitcher for the week?
I do not. I don't know if you mentioned it last week, but I really can't, as a Cub fan, say enough about what Justin Steele is putting together this year. Not his best showing, but he continues to be a workhorse for that rotation.
I'm not going to lie. Justin Steele is rapidly winning my favor for NL Cy Young. I really think it very well could be his award to lose. The way he has been pitching this year, he has been really, really, really good. And to think that there was a question earlier this year of whether he would be, whether he would actually make the roster. What a joke. He has completely proved that wrong.
I don't know that there was a question of that. It was more a question of where he would slot in the rotation.
Oh, okay.
I mean, he's taken on that second role pretty good. He's kind of the de facto ace right now, I think.
Yeah. Number 2 in the National League in ERA. He is number 1 in wins, tied with Strider and Taijuan Walker. I mean, he does anything the Cubs ask him to. The only thing, he's not going to strike out a ton of batters. That's not his stuff. He is going to induce contact and have his defense make the outs. He's got a 1.17 whip and a 248 average against. Those are great numbers for a starting pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Joe, who's the adulting reliever of the week?
So at the risk of being called a homer, I have 2. Carlos Estevez from the Angels, rather efficient in his 2 save opportunities this week, converting both of those. 1 hit, no runs, and 2 strikeouts. So very effective there, and 2 innings only, nothing extra beyond that. So rather efficient and rather effective. And then Adbert Alzolay, again, 2 for 2 in save opportunities this week, 3 innings pitched. 1 hit, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts, a .067 whip, and a 111 batting average against. So the guy has been lights out since he's become the starter, or the closer rather, and he's up around 16, 17 saves after not being the starter or the closer to start the year.
Yeah, definitely the right move by the Cubs. And Joe, after Jason picked 2 Phillies, it would not be considered a homer pick in my book. All right, so looking at the hot teams, I picked the Dodgers this week. They've won 8 straight games, and so far in the month of August, they've only lost 1 game. Yikes. Joe, you picked Milwaukee?
Hey, you got to recognize greatness when it happens.
That had to be painful, dude.
They won. They have won 5 of the last 6 games, so they went 5-1 last week. And made what the Cubs did in Toronto look like nothing because of their winning efforts. Taking 2 out of 3 in Toronto for the Cubs was a big deal. Losing 2 of 3 to the Mets hurt. But had the Milwaukee not had the week they had, the picture would be a little tighter right now. So you can't blame them. And I mean, nothing like trying to mess with Milwaukee and hope that I jinx them in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
When you look at their schedule here for the next 2 weeks, they play the Dodgers and the Rangers this week. And then they play the Twins and Padres the following week before they go to Wrigley for 3 with the Cubs to end August. So, that's a tough 2-week stretch for them. And I'm hoping that, giving them credit now hurts them for the next 2 weeks.
Spoken like a true Cubs fan. Jason's hot team for the week was the Seattle Mariners, 8-2 in their last 10. The losses were back-to-back extra innings losses to Baltimore this past weekend. And then looking upcoming, Atlanta 3 versus the Yankees. Tonight was Fried versus Schmidt, and 6 of those runs went to Schmidt, at least. Elder versus Severino tomorrow. Morton versus Vasquez on Wednesday. And then 3 versus the Giants, Strider versus Cobb, Chirinos versus Webb, and Fried versus starter to be announced later from the Giants. I'm excited to see Jock Peterson come back to Atlanta. I think that's going to be a good time. he's going to get a really, really good ovation when he gets there too. I still kind of wish we would have got him as a free agent, but I think things have worked out okay with Rosario.
Yeah, he's excellent. Jock is a fun guy, and he's a workhorse. He will do whatever you ask him to do.
Yeah.
I do think it was funny when Pham got traded at the deadline. He was going to whoever the Giants were playing. So somebody said, don't tell Jock Tommy Pham's in the locker room. Back to their fantasy football dispute a year or so ago.
I remember that. That was hilarious. And then the Cubbies, as you mentioned earlier, they're on an easy week, a 5-gamer this week. 2 versus the White Sox, Hendricks versus Toussaint. Tukey. I'm glad Tukey still has a job in the majors. And then a player to be announced versus Clevenger. Did they announce somebody?
It's like there's a lot of talk that is going to be Marcus. He's going to be back tomorrow, or Wednesday is the word.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that's what is going to happen. That's what I've been hearing. The other option could be Javier Assad if Stroman's not ready.
Okay. And then 3 versus the Royals, Steele versus Reagans, Tyone versus Singer, and Hendricks versus Lyles. I mean, Joe, I know it's always a happy week for you when you get to see Hendricks pitch twice. So, you got to take care of business this week.
We just highlighted the Brewers schedule, and you have the White Sox and the Royals. You've got to take care of business.
Yeah, it's got to be a 4 or 5 week. This can't be a split and a 2-for-1. You need to sweep the White Sox because they're flailing, and you've got to take at least 2 or 3 from the Royals.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing I think playing 2 weaker teams, maybe that will help Hendricks kind of get some things dialed back in a bit. And what Tyone are we going to have against the Royals?
That's always the question.
He was really rough for a long time, and then he was really good for like 3-4 weeks, and then he had shades of his former self on Sunday. So hoping that things kind of get evened out here and fixed up.
And then the Phillies, they also have a 5-game week. But in the case of the Phillies, I don't mind a 5-game week for them after that 17 straight hell stretch MLB put them on. All on the road, though. 2 at the Blue Jays, Wheeler versus Kikuchi, Nola versus Gossman, and then 3 at the Nats. I should note Sunday's game is the Little League World Series game that'll be held up in Williamsport, so that game is technically a neutral site game. The probables, though, Lorenzen versus Adon, Walker versus Irvin, and Suarez versus Williams for the Little League game. And then for our other home team, the Orioles, the road trip continues for their final 6 games here. 3 at the Padres, Rodriguez versus Darvish, Flaherty versus Waka, and a former Cardinal versus former Cardinal matchup. And then Kremer versus Snell, and then 3 at the A's, Gibson versus Medina, Bradish versus Waldachuk, and Rodriguez versus Sears. So, again, talk about weeks you need to show progress and get stuff done. The Orioles should take 4 out of 6 this week. They should take 2 out of 3 from. I know it's an East Coast team going west. Anything could happen. But they should, at the very least, they should take 2 out of 3 from the A's, and they really should take 2 out of 3 from the Padres.
I think you have to win both series. Not that it's not a must win at this point, but I think getting in the right direction off the road trip and then going back home next week. You need that good energy coming back.
Well, and Baltimore is 3 games up, but now's the time to pad that up as much as you can against teams that are well below 500. This is the time to do it. So.
Yep.
All right, Joe, that's everything I've got. Do you have anything else for the week?
No, I mean, I'm looking forward to this. Might be the only Sunday night baseball game I watch all year with the Little League Classic. It's a lot of fun seeing the footage of the guys interacting with the kids and having a good time. And Little League World Series week up there is always a great time. So
I always love when you watch when they show the clubhouse shots of the guys that played in the Little League World Series and they see their regional, their region that they used to play for made it through, and they're bringing everybody in the clubhouse over to root for their old region. I love seeing that.
I think to me the most famous major leaguer that I remember playing in the Little League World Series is Todd Frazier.
Yeah, I remember
playing with Tom's River, New Jersey.
Yep. Man, Tom's River, when we were kids, Tom's River put out some ridiculously good teams. They might have fudged some records once or twice with, ages of pitchers, shall we leave that delicately. But despite that, Tom's Rivers, even without that guy, holy crap, those were some great teams.
Yeah.
All right, guys, you can find the audio recordings on Anchor, Spotify, Breaker, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, and anywhere else you find your podcasts. You can see us live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Merchandise is at redbubble.com. And you can follow us on our Facebook page, facebook.com/$dogsandbeer, on our Twitter page at DDAB_podcast. All 3 of us are still on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called now. We're going to go with Twitter. I'm at PyroLord314, Jason's at JRicker300, Joe's at JoltonJoe35. We're presented by Dark Arrow Podcast LLC and sponsored by the phenomenal Whiskey and Blade Barbershop right here in Lidditz. May your dogs always cost $1, may your beer always be cold. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.